novel communications system for $171 million, and we were awarded a grant of $154 million for that program. I guess we can be considered to be sort of the godparents of that program, because it'll actually be administered by L.A. Ricks, and the county is serving as the fiscal agent. So I've asked the CAOs if we can put a little asterisk next to our funding amounts to indicate. We don't get credit for the $154 million because the county will be the fiscal agent, but I feel very good about the fact that our folks in Homeland Security played a lead role in helping us to get this money. So we should feel very proud.
What percentage of that will be used by the city? I mean,
yes. Do you
know what percentage roughly?
No, I do not.
No, I can get that for you though.
Yeah,
I'll get an answer for you.
That's great news.
Yeah. I also wanted to share with you an article that just came out last Friday in the Washington Post, that a report that gives the stimulus package high marks. I know there's been a lot of concern raised about whether stimulus, what it's doing, effective. This report primarily is about the ability of the administration to be able to get the money out. The report says that basically that they've been able to get the money out on time and under budget with little, if any, claims of fraud or abuse. They've spent, as of the end of September, the administration had spent 70% of the Act's original $787 billion. To that degree, the area that we're most interested in, the area of loans and grants and contracts, there's $275 billion available, and the federal government has obligated all of that money, and they have expended 52% of that money has been paid out. So things are in fact moving along there, and wanted to let you know. And I understand we're going to have a more thorough discussion about the whole issue of how we're doing here in the city on the 22nd. So
obviously, yeah, there was, just to let the public know and others, there was obviously a lot of attention in the controller's report about how many jobs have been created. It's been quoted around the country, et cetera, and it just seemed to be, numbers were different from what we had been hearing reported here, so we want to kind of have controller's office, CAO be able to, mayor's office be able to report what we believe the numbers to have actually been, to make sure that that record is made as crystal clear as possible, not playing with numbers one way or the other, but making sure that they're not distorted one way or the other as well is critically important.
Yes, sir. We're very anxious to make that presentation to you on the 22nd and set the record straight on that. This is the end of the...
One thing, too, is that in addition to the number of jobs, I think what's also critical in that is, are we actually spending the money, that we're not stockpiling it? And that, because that was another part that... Yes, sir. We're
going to address that, and I think there are some issues there that we do want to get on top of with respect to that. This was marked the end of the quarter. September 30th was the end of the quarter that started on July 1st. So we have our quarterly OMB reports that we're in the process of having those submitted. We're a prime recipient on 16 of those programs reports that we have to be making reports on, and the CEO's staff, Stacy and Cammie and Anna Mae, have been working feverishly and working with the departments and reviewing it and making sure, as you know, in the past, all of our quarterly reports, we've made sure that they've been submitted on time. We've not been late on any of them. Because of the holiday on Monday, actually, the feds gave an extension to October 13th, but I think we're on track to make all of those on time to do that.
Great.
Not related necessarily to two things, not related directly to ARA, but as you know, today the job employment rate numbers came out. The unemployment rate is still at 9.6%, and there was a job loss of 95,000 jobs during the past month. Interestingly, the story behind that is, though, that there were 64,000 jobs created in the private sector. This is the 9th month in a row in which there's been an increase in private sector jobs. What contributed, however, to the big loss in jobs was government jobs. And so this is the issue that we have to face here.
Census, or even beyond census?
Some of them are census jobs, but just overall what's happening with local and state government. And so this is the issue all along that we've talked about, that the impact of this recession is being felt, a year and a half, 2 years later at the local government level, and we're the ones that are having to suffer as a result of that. Unfortunately, the Congress doesn't seem to be willing to really want to do more in terms of the spending and stimulus spending, so we're going to have to do with what we can. Lastly, too, we've been awaiting some announcements about some non-ARA grants, but the Tiger 2 round, this was $600 million of, again, discretionary funding. Tiger stands for Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery. There was $1.5 billion in ARA. They thought it was such a successful program because they received $60 billion worth of requests for $1.5 billion of funding. The Congress passed an additional $600 million for a second round of funding. And we've submitted a number of grants for that. In addition to that, HUD came out with a program called Sustainable Communities, which also had a deadline of August 23rd, and we're just waiting on those. And as far as I know, my understanding is that those grants will probably be helpful to some congressional districts and senators and things running for re-election. So there's only 3 weeks before the election. So we think that any moment now we should be hearing about those, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll do well in those applications that we made. And that's my report.
Okay.
Good morning. My report's very brief today. I would just like to highlight one additional change to the dashboard. We've seen an increase in total dollars awarded in the formula category as a result of an additional $500,000 that was authorized for BOE's work on the Tampa Bridge resurfacing project. So that brings our grand total to just over $630 million citywide. Additionally, at the last meeting of ad hoc, Councilmember Rosendahl had requested additional information regarding HPRP and the services being provided in his area. Los Angeles Housing Department and LAHSA is here today to provide those details. And you will be hearing from us at the next meeting regarding overall status of the city's ARA program on October 22nd.
And are we, one methodological question, are we counting folks who apply from LA for our grants independent of the city of LA, but they work in the city of LA in our totals? Or, there are some grants that were available for nonprofits directly, and, I get good news of folks that have actually been very aggressive and done well with those, but that's not reflected in this total, right?
We have not been tracking that in our total.
We can get that information if you go on to recovery.gov and you look at all the little dots, and you're able to do that. We are trying to track what other public agencies are doing, what the county and MTA and school district and community college district are getting. So when you look at the overall package, well over $2 billion.
Good. And just as a reminder, we will agendize the comprehensive report from the CAO's office at our regularly scheduled next meeting on the 22nd. So folks who are tracking that and want to see how LA is doing and where we're at should tune in on the 22nd. So, all right, let's...
Let me just ask
you. Yeah, Mr. Parks.
Jim, one thing, I went to SCAG yesterday, and they had one of these video presentations from... the federal government dealing with clean cities, and there's several $1 million that's forthcoming on assisting cities to reduce its dependence on petroleum. Right. And we asked the specific question about whether the city's effort in dealing with greening of cabs, was that viable? And they said generally the owner of the vehicle is normally the applicant, but that the city could consider putting together a program, particularly with that kind of large impact, and allowing a subsidy or subsidizing the cabs to have access to the converter equipment. And so I was wondering, we're going to have this issue come before T Committee on the 13th. And I was wondering if you could take the time to talk with Hassan over at SCAG and make sure I got all the details, because it's not a lot of money, but from the person on the video was saying that they're looking for big bang type of projects that they could use the money on, and the larger and the largest impact is going to be given that kind of consideration.
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to do that. And that's my understanding, too, from, as you know, from the memo that I put together for you on that the grant funding for Clean Cities is going to be coming out, I think, probably before the end of the year. And the cabs could be eligible, and we could put something together.
And if your time allows, if you could come to that T committee, and maybe, because that would be a very vital part of that.
Be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no action required on item 1, so let's go ahead to number 2. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Okay, Wei Lau with the CAO's office. I'm sorry. It's too early for me. The report before you is a report on the ARA transportation projects. In summary, this report recommends additional funding from NICLA, and it also provides you with a status update on the projects, expenditures, and reimbursements as of June 30th, 2010. Last year, the city was notified that we would be getting about $97.34 million in funding for transportation projects. And council authorized funding from MICLA of $52.6 million, and that's MICLA commercial paper, because these projects are reimbursable projects. The funding was based on department's estimate of what they think they need for expenditures and encumbrances in 2009-10. The federal authorization for these projects have been amended when we prepared the report to $95.67 million. It's a reduction of $1.67 million due to lower construction contract costs. On attachment A, you will see a summary by project of the amendments. The city was able to exchange $1.44 million of the $1.67 million in reduction for an equal allocation of surface transportation program local allocation, which we can use for future transportation projects. And those don't have a deadline on it, but it does have a match component to it. Subsequent to the release of this report, we were informed by Caltrans in September 27 that the city received an increased authorization that Stacy shared with you earlier on the Tampa Bridge resurfacing project of $500,372. Although attachment A reflects data as of June 30th, we added it in the revision that we provided to the clerk, so you have everything on one document. What we're asking then, because of this increase in authorization, is also a revision to our MICLA funding in our report. We're requesting additional MICLA funding of $43,564,427 instead of what was in the original report of $43,064,055. And this will be reflected in the changes we gave to the clerk on recommendations 1 and 2. The other changes we would like to make at this time is to revise recommendation 7 and attachment B. The appropriations to 2 departments, which is engineering and Con Ed, was inadvertently left out for the street services LA Unified Valley Regional High School number 4 project. We're increasing the appropriation for city staffing costs by $33,853 for a new total of $24,884,233. Also, there's a typo on attachment B. The hiring hall benefits account number should be 1120 instead of 1020. All these changes have been provided to the clerk for the city records, and I believe you have them in your packets as well. The other things I want to go through in this report, just for the record, this report recommends paying debt service from Fund 299. It's a MICLA commercial paper fund that was established specifically for these projects instead of from the CAP Finance Fund that we traditionally do, because last year we ran into a problem of not being able to pay down debt service before year end, and CAP Finance reverts. So with the recommendation that we've included in this report to make that change and also to clear that CAP Finance Reserve Fund loan, we'll take care of the administrative record. This report also reiterates and emphasizes billing and reimbursing for city costs. Last year, based on info that we had in FMIS, city expenditures were about $22.76 million. We received about $18.9 million back, which is 83%. The reason that percentage is so high is when we bill MICLA, we're billing for direct costs not fringe. Caltrans pays fringe as a direct cost, so we're actually getting much more back. And at the end of the day, what we have left, once we pay down all the NICLA expenditures, will go to the general fund as related costs for us. It's the simplest way to keep the accounting instead of splitting each check by its individual pieces. It would drive our departments crazy if we have to do that. As you know, we don't have the staff to go through that kind of detailed breakdown. The departments are here. Should you have any questions that are project-specific or on billing?
Thank you for that report. It's a very good report. I just wanted to kind of give the cheat sheet again for the public of the projects here. We have a lot of resurfacing projects throughout the city, increasing the safety of grates throughout the city for bicyclists who are sometimes caught on the grates on our city streets, left-hand turn arrows, new signals, changing out some of our incandescent lights to LED lights to save energy and save money. The ATSAC system, which is a traffic control system, rail crossings and pedestrian improvements, and a series of street and pedestrian improvements, I know, in Mr. Rosenthal's district around the LAX corridor, which has been something that was a promise of his and of ours as we moved forward with improving that corridor. Do we have any estimate on how many jobs were created or retained as a result of this funding?
That information will be coming to you when you go through the more comprehensive discussion on the 22nd.
Okay. I look forward to hearing that on the 22nd. Other questions on the transportation?
Yeah. Let me just ask you to go over again on the issue of the first $52 million that Nicola went forward on. How much of that have been reimbursed, and what did we do with the reimbursement?
Okay. Of the $52 million in NICLA Authority, we spent $22.76. There's some encumbrances in there, but that's not part of the $22.76 amount. We've been reimbursed $18.9 million, which is 83% of our expenditures. And there are still other reimbursements that are coming in with the final billing for 2009-10.
Okay. And then when we get the reimbursement, it basically retires the debt?
Yes, we transfer it to the NICLA fund to pay down the debt.
Okay, thank you.
If I could ask you just about the status of it. I'm most pleased, to tell you the truth, about the hospitality zone, the $7 million. It's meant a lot to the folks in Westchester and along the corridor there. What we're eventually trying to create is a conference center near LAX. We're working with the Community College Board on that so that LA hotels there on Century Boulevard can be a destination point, just not a dropover for people flying around, or the people on the plane. Do you have a sense of where we are on that? That's project $7 million, contract awarded to City Force Construction.
Let me ask Street Services to respond to that.
Good, are they here? Anybody from Street Services here?
Don't be shy, come on forward. Anybody, Street? There you go.
It says that it's 32% completed, is that right? And it will be completed by 6/30/2012.
Good morning, Ron Olive, Bureau of Street Services.
Morning, Ron.
I apologize, I was hiding in the back row there. Actually, an update we have through the end of August 2010. For that particular project, we have spent about $2.7 million of the $7 million, but we still are on track to get it all completed by the end of June 2012, yes.
And are you clear what we're spending it on exactly? Do we have a breakdown of how that money has been spent and how the rest of it will be? A lot of folks are asking for different things along the corridor.
Yeah, I heard you talking about the conference center, but really the scope of work that was submitted was all for the sidewalk reconstruction work and street resurfacing work.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the limit of this particular application.
And I'm wondering if we could expand it potentially. In Westchester, there's the Westchester Streetscape, which is from the beginning of Westchester, which is sort of the entrance to LAX, along Sepulveda Boulevard. Sepulveda is a disaster with the sidewalks just not even walkable. and that the Westchester streetscape has raised $1 million thanks to Maxine Waters, put it in a couple of years ago, and another $300,000 from local people. We're actually looking for some more money to complete the project. We don't have the money. Is it possible to attach one to the other or go in for another stimulus package?
We can certainly ask that question. I would be honest with you, I would doubt that it would qualify. We had kind of a very specific area that we had submitted on. It was really based on the LAX hospitality zone ordinance, and I think this falls outside that ordinance area.
I like you looking at it because when we rezone the area there for business opportunities, we talk about the Westchester community, which has stepped up, has a bid, and have spent a lot of energy and time, but they don't have enough funds to actually complete what we need to do. If we could take a look at that part of Sepulveda, that's part of the streetscape, and see, since it is, for many people, the big LAX sign comes right out of Westchester and goes there. If we could look into that and possibly extend it or even go for another grant.
We sure will.
And I know that Maxine Waters will be extremely supportive and engaged with us on it, as well as Jane Harmon.
We will do it, and we'll work with your office as well to make sure we have the right boundaries there you want to have.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Other members on transportation funds? Any specific ones? If not,
So we will request that the committee adopt the revised recommendations and revise attachment B.
okay, we will go ahead and approve the report with the revised attachment and recommendations.
Thank you.
Without objection. And just for the record, we do have a quorum here of council members Rosendahl, Parks, Alarcon, and myself. Item number 3, please.
Good morning. My name is Mark Hoffman. I'm with the Community Development Department, and we are here today to report back for the 4th time our monthly status with respect to the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. As you probably recall, in June of this year, Council authorized the Community Development Department to administer this grant, and it's only been since that time that the grant has really been able to expend funds. There was a process of getting the grant award, but also there was a process of a strategic plan having to be approved by the Department of Energy, which is a federal agency that has granted us these funds. That approval only came in spring of this year, and again, Council approved the expenditures of funds in June. Since that time, and even since we last reported last month, there's been great progress with all of our 15 projects. A transmittal was provided to this committee with a report attached which details the project, all 15 projects and their status. I won't go through all 15 projects, but there are a couple highlights that I think are worth noting. For one, we have spent a fair amount of money, almost $1 million, because the Bureau of Street Lighting has ordered street lights and parts for about 600 street lights to be replaced. As part of the item before you, there is action to approve street lighting over time in order to install those lights. Street Lighting performed a cost-benefit analysis and decided it was more cost-effective to have city forces work on this retrofit work rather than contract out. Contracting would have taken 8 months, and it would have been more costly since the companies would need to make a profit, which the city does not. The other project that may be of public note is the Department of Water and Power on October 1st released a series of incentives connected with energy, and part of those are related to this grant. They primarily are the cool roofing and whole house fan systems for which those who purchase these items can get rebates from the Department of Water and Power. DWP has put this item on their website and they've publicized it in other ways. And again, I think that's an accomplishment of this grant. Other activities have occurred with every other project, mainly in the area of contract development, RFPs, and preparations for work in the retrofit areas, as well as in some of the studies that are contained in the 15 projects. The last item that I wanted to mention, we mentioned last time we were here, but I guess we didn't put it formally in writing, so this time we did, which is to move the accountability and transparency line item from DWP to the mayor's office. That item was transferred to DWP with several other items when the Department of Environmental Affairs was disbanded back in June. And as we discussed last time we were here, it seems more appropriate that that item be in a central official's office, namely the mayor's office, who will work on the issues of communications and transparency with respect to this grant and energy efficiency in general.
Is that essentially former environmental affairs folks that are now in the mayor's office then will fulfill that role? Is that why it's in the mayor's office instead of DWP, or can you walk us through a little bit?
Yes, Councilman Romel Pascal, Deputy Mayor for Environment. Partly it is that, but partly it's also, it was originally intended as a shared role between Environmental Affairs and the Mayor's Office, in that when we looked at accountability and transparency, it was really looking at the whole new social media of how we communicate all of the work that's being done in each one of the program areas, and that the capacity of how that could be done rested in both places. And we've seen in terms of capacity, DWP is less so than there is capacity in the mayor's office to do this type of work with videos, YouTubes, other social forms of media. And so we're still working with folks within the Environmental Affairs Department, employees, but the administration of this particular program will land with our office.
Okay. And how much is that line again?
What was the amount? It's about $394,000.
Okay. If we could, if as one of the conditions of moving over there, I have no problem doing that. Just have the mayor's office maybe come in and give us just a quick game plan of what that looks like, because I think there's council offices that are doing some interesting things on social media, and the city really has no coordinated strategy for that. But I love these experiments where we start to do that, and I think it would be great to see. ITA should at least be a spectator for that. I know that's not the role that they play, and they don't have the resources to do a lot of that. That's our information technology agency. But, we have a very uneven social media execution in this city. For instance, the Los Angeles Fire Department, Brian Humphreys, the public information officer, is known internationally as a great model. I mean, if somebody using Twitter and other social media to communicate important information to people on a very timely basis. Other departments, that have as big a reach have almost nothing. So I'd love to hear the game plan. Other questions, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
Let me ask, on the street lighting issue, one of the things that appeared to me anyway confusing is that I thought when they proposed the program that it was going to be totally funded by advance of the rebates from DWP. Now, when you say they need overtime, is that also going to be funded by the rebates, or is that general fund overtime? How is that going to be paid for?
Street lighting is here. We'll have them come actually explain.
While they're coming up, let me ask you, the one thing that concerned me, this is our fourth report, and one of the things I'm concerned is that we gave approval to go out and do the assessment of the 100-plus buildings. It appears now that we're expending money on training 45 city employees to move into this field, but we haven't gotten the answer for the most important question is, where's the money going to come back for the debt service if we accept that grant? And what I don't want to be put in a position that we do all of this stuff and then you come back to us at the last minute and say, being that we've done all this, we might as well go forward, because the general fund is not going to be able to absorb any of this debt service. And so that's the link that no one's come back to tell us. You just tell us we're moving in all these directions, but if you accept the $34 million grant, the $14 million only pays for 2 to 3 years of debt service. Where does the other 15 years of debt service come from?
Councilmember, let me address the GSD portion of this in terms of the assessments. So as of yesterday, GSD is finalizing the scope of work for the consultant to do the third-party verification. So in consultation with the CAO's office, GSD, along with the Clean Climate Initiative, is finalizing the scope that should go out early next week. That scope is going to look at the verification of that 20% minimum, is what we all agree.
The 20% is savings. They have to have the 20% per facility.
Right, of energy savings per facility, and to verify it, because that is what Bond Council needs. And so this is also a new area of work for many of the folks in the energy efficiency world, in terms of how does one verify the 20% that then feeds into the bond. And so that work will be released for RFP Tuesday, is the anticipated date.
Okay, but even when we find that, and if we find that 100 of the buildings we can, we still don't have the debt service to accept the $34 million. I mean, that's the missing link. And so we can go do the analysis, we can come back and say every one of these buildings, if we do A, B, and C, they can save 20%, but we haven't basically crossed the T's and dotted the I's as to how do you pay for it over the next 17 years.
Right, and to remind folks, the first 2 years of debt service will be covered by the original $14 million. And when CAO and GSD come back to you to issue the bonds, my understanding is it will be November, then we will have where the debt service will be coming from the savings, because we will have the verified numbers.
Okay, but the key is you can't pay the debt service with soft money.
Understood.
So there's got to be dollars that pays the debt service, not efficiencies that say we have done all this stuff and it's 20% less. It's got to be real dollars that you've identified that basically goes in as a source of revenue to pay the debt service. And again, what I don't want to happen is you come November and bring us all this package of stuff and then say we're going to do it with efficiencies and productivity, and that never seems to be realized.
Understood.
We got to have real dollars to deal with that. Let me ask on street service, street lighting, on the issue of overtime, is that part of the rebate that you're going to get to put this program in play?
Attorney Marine, street lighting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
No, it's two separate funds. The money we're using, the ARA money, is to retrofit the lights that aren't part of the DWP loan. So it's
you're using our money on the project that's not part of what?
Well, it's part of the same program. We're converting all the lights in the city to LED. These particular lights are lights that involve more high maintenance, involve conduit work, and wiring work. So it's a separate entity.
So what, have we expanded the program since it was approved in the budget?
Well, it's supplemental. Our intention is to convert all of the streetlights to LED.
Because I think what you sold us on was you're going to convert all the streetlights, you were going to pay for them through the advance of the rebate from DWP, and it was going to be a cross-neutral issue. Today we're saying there's a need of money for overtime to implement, and that's what's confusing.
Well, no, we're also doing the LED retrofit on overtime.
But is that paid for by the rebate?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the source of money for the overtime you're asking for today?
From the CPG.
So it's coming from the same source?
No, they're two different sources. The DWP fund is funding our 140,000 units, and the EECBG is going to fund the 600 lights that we're doing as part of this ARA program.
Okay. I didn't understand all the alphabets. What is the source of funds on what you're asking today?
The Energy Efficiency Block Grant.
It's block grant. So it's coming from CDD? Okay, is that part of, 36 year or whatever?
It's coming from the $37 million energy efficiency block grant that was just transferred to CDD to manage. So part of the allocation that went to Bureau Street Lighting will be used for the purchase of materials to do the work and also for their overtime.
So it's part of the ARA grant that we've already approved? Thank you.
Other questions, colleagues? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and approve the report. And I know that if we can go back to item number 1 on some of the housing issues, Mr. Rosendahl had some questions. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, last time when we met, we talked about LASA, and I'd like LASA to come up and give us an update. We're talking about in my district, the 11th district, is the street-to-home issue, and how do we get people into housing? We know that we have funds available for housing, and I'm curious how we're viewing where we're presently at and where we need to go. To be more specific, and I apologize for being provincial about it, but in Venice we have a significant homeless problem. We have folks in cars and campers that have, in some cases, caused issues with homeowners and apartment owners and renters by being right in front of their face and living there literally and causing health issues in some cases or even some safety issues in some other cases. We also have a significant population living on the beach. And we have youth also who are homeless on the beach. And it's become, for us in Venice, an extremely significant and frustrating problem. And I want to see how the federal stimulus money can help us. LASA's given us some background and some support, but I'd like an update if there's anything you can share with us today.
Certainly. Good morning, council members. Steve Andrzejewski with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority.
Very good.
As you know, the homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing program is split up into 3 projects: the prevention piece, the rapid rehousing piece, and the vehicular outreach piece, which was set up with correspondence with your office. That team is made up of a collaboration of the outreach teams from People Assisting the Homeless and St. Joseph Center. Their job is to go out through the whole city of Los Angeles and engage with folks that are living in their vehicles, campers, cars, with a specific emphasis on the Venice area. Through August, we have engaged 175 households through this program, and what the program does is engages folks in their cars or vehicles and assesses their needs. Now, HPRP is a specific program, and not all folks living in their vehicles would be eligible for this low-barrier program. But folks are assessed, and if they're eligible for HPRP, they are referred to our rapid rehousing centers. If they're not eligible for HPRP, they're referred to other more appropriate services. So through August, we've engaged 175 families living in their vehicles and referred those families to the HPRP program. What we're also doing now, as the council member knows, we have completed a very comprehensive assessment of vehicles in the Venice area. We've taken pictures, license plates, and made a pretty comprehensive packet. What we're doing now is we're refocusing, and we've identified 252 vehicles specifically in the Venice area. What we're doing now is we're refocusing the entire vehicular outreach team to assess and assess all 252 vehicles and move those folks where possible. We want to assess them where they're eligible for HPRP. We're going to get them into HPRP. HPRP will provide the move-in assistance. They provide security deposits first month's rent and up to 6 months of rental subsidies for families. So in doing this assessment, we're confident that we can really target those families that are homeless in living in that area. We realize that not all of those vehicles are homeless folks, but by doing the total assessment of all 252 vehicles, we want to target those that are homeless and get them into HPRP to get them housed, or point them to the most appropriate service to address their needs.
Sounds good, but the reality that I'm also facing with is that we're looking at a Vehicles to Homes program that as an interim step of putting folks in maybe a parking lot where they can get a good night's sleep, but under certain rules and regulations. We have communities like Westchester have stepped up to identify families who are living in cars and vehicles. But specifically, I would like to see more resources, frankly, coming from the federal government to assist in this. It's a nickel-dime thing, and we know the ultimate solution is permanent housing with supportive services, which we're just scratching the edges of it in concept, but in reality we have practically no opportunities to put these folks in permanent housing with supportive services. And when you hear that, do you see going forward some more substantial commitment to creating housing and the wraparound services that would be critical?
Correct. Now, to address your point regarding Vehicles to Homes, one of our desires is to really, the federal government has really sent down a message to us that we need to leverage all of our funding, both federal funding and local funding. And what we want to do with the Vehicles to Homes program, which your office is sponsoring, is really leverage these ARA dollars to get those folks that are in the safe parking spots, and use the ARA dollars to get those folks housed where we can get them housed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we are making every effort. We will make every effort when the Vehicles to Homes project comes to fruition to leverage the ARA dollars, to use that as the initial funding to get those folks housed where we can.
Yeah, that's the music to my ears that I'm actually looking forward to. We do have an RFP out there right now. We have one social agency that's responding in discussion with us, and hopefully we can announce that shortly and actually get the program rolling. So
it's actually scheduled to be announced, I think, in November.
Yeah, and we'd like a report back in a month on the status of that collaboration. And frankly, I think we really need to get more support out of Washington to assist us in the actual homes and wraparound services, permanent housing with supportive services.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to add something?
No, I'm Suzette Foreman with the LA City Housing Department. We're the main grantee, and I agree with everything Steve said. There's nothing really to add. We're very committed to the vehicular outreach. We're very committed to the vehicular outreach program and focusing the HPRP money there to get those people housed or at least assessed, and obviously to the rest of the program as well.
Mm-hmm. So, is there any effort being made besides the people in the cars and campers to deal with the homeless who are literally living on the beach and living, in alleyways and are in great needs? Have we done any assessment of how many folks we have walking on the streets in Venice?
LASA has two outreach teams, one that's specifically focused on families and one that's focused on addressing the needs of our public officials. And we do respond to requests from all offices and we have responded to several requests from your office when we're called to do so, to investigate folks on the beaches in Venice. And we will continue to do so. I don't believe a total assessment of the folks in Venice the homeless count is actually scheduled, our biennial homeless count is actually scheduled to be completed this coming January. So we will have new comprehensive numbers for that.
I don't want to dominate any more of the meeting, but I want one more report back. I'd like you to meet with Stand Up for Kids, which is a group of ladies that are engaged in hooking up with youth who are on the beach. We've given them the opportunity to be at the Westminster Senior Center, a block and a half from the ocean, to give them a meal and to give them counseling and mentoring with the hope of some of these vulnerable young teens can get an opportunity at life itself. I mean, they've left homes and they're on the street. And I'd like you to take a look at that program that Stand Up for Kids are doing and see how we could interface with them with some of these grants. They're in the process of the organization setting it up, taking the young kids and giving them that kind of nourishing support, which they don't have, and it's a very critical part of the homeless equation. If you could meet with Stand Up for Kids and see if we can somehow collaborate and hopefully get some grant money to assist on the most vulnerable, which frankly are the children that are out there on the streets.
We're more than happy to do that.
Get back with me on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we just have a couple minutes, but as long as somebody's here from housing, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Sustainable Communities grant that we put forward?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
Do you want
understand.
to tell us about the Sustainable Communities grant, just for a quick overview?
The Stable Communities, the NSP Neighborhood Stabilization Program, is that what you're asking?
I don't know, maybe it wasn't LAHD that was the lead. Who was the lead for the Sustainable Communities grant that you mentioned earlier? Was it not the Housing Department? I know it goes through HUD, so I thought it was Housing Department, but maybe...
I'm not saying it's not with LHD, it's just not something I'm familiar with.
Okay. All right, maybe we can find out for next meeting. Okay, great. Thank you. We will, again, still take no action on number 1 except for the report back without objection. Do we have any public comment cards? Okay. This meeting is adjourned. We will start our City Council meeting in a couple minutes. Thank you.
If you want to second it, which would be awesome.
Let's take a look at it.